Okay, we're starting our meeting, and I think we first have to take the attendance roll. Does Jamie do that?
Sure, I can do that.
Thank you.
Okay, we have Mark Oswald,
Here.
Isaac Tahara.
Here.
Okay, Catherine Wilson here, and Sharon Garbowitz.
Here.
And Steve Casey is not here right now.
And if he shows up, he'll certainly be welcome to continue taking part. And we say the Pledge of Allegiance. We've been doing that. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So, in the interest of taking care of our applicant, let's put him first on the agenda and refer to the attachments if we could. Now, is the applicant online now?
Zero
Don't
attendance.
see him there, all right? So we want to do.
Well, let's call up the application. As I recall, it was simple to the extreme, because I recall it says temporary ban.
No, this isn't the banner, Dan. This is the sign.
Well,
You approved the banner previously.
oh, I see. Okay, then I got the attachments mixed up.
Right, total wireless, you approved the banner previously, but now it's a sign affixed to the facade.
Oh,
So
okay.
that's the application now.
Yeah, all right.
To see, like a rendering, yeah.
Yeah. And it's not illuminated. It's just, I recall seeing a section. It just looked like it was like an inch thick or something like that. You roll down, Jamie, there's a section. Yeah, there it is. 3 inches thick. Yeah. something
Yeah,
like
3
that.
and 8. Yeah.
And, simple sign. It's not illuminated. There's nothing there that I saw that says illumination. Is there anything I missed there that said illumination? Translucent?
No, I don't believe so.
Paint finish,
yeah.
Yeah. So, would you care, may I ask if there's a motion to vote on it? If there's no public comment? Yes.
Motion.
Okay, Mark, anyone second it?
Second.
Okay, so we shall vote. All in favor of the applicant, of the application? Raise their hands.
Aye.
It's unanimous, so our application is approved.
Okay, I'll prepare a certificate of appropriateness. We'll get it to Jamie, we'll get it to Dan, and applicant will be set.
Thank you.
You got it.
All right. I think in the future, though, I mean, this is such a simple thing. In the future, though, if it was complicated and the applicant wasn't online or here in person, I think that might be a different story. But
What we would ordinarily do is if we have something else on the agenda, we go to that, see if they get here. If not, we put it off till the next meeting.
yeah, I mean,
Simple as that.
yeah, but this is so simple that, okay. All right, let's move on. So this is terrific. We can now go on to the amendments that have been around for a few months. And Jamie, may I just first say, I'd like to take up the Virium, the ones that affect the structure guide. So that would be Virium Amendment, Brandrift, Pill, and National Bank. I'd like to go through those first before we go to the design guidelines, which are the first 3 items. So if you could call it the Virium Amendment, is that easy? Yeah, there.
Right there.
So you'll see in yellow, everything is proposed as a changes in yellow. And let's see, what else did we do? Renovated the condominiums 1988. Yeah, just to give you a background, I got the drawings of this project from Foil. And I went through the construction documents. And if you could scroll down a bit, Jamie, please. The reason I brought this building up to begin with is, as you can clearly see it, you don't see chimneys, and the central dormer isn't the way it was in the picture at the top. And if you could keep scrolling down, I think that's the right elevation. So I was curious. You can see right there, all that, right? Yeah, that's the pictures to look at right there. So, you know, you can see that at some point this building had very signature massive brick chimneys, at least two, maybe more. And the central dormer was much more dominant and ornamental, I think, in the original project. And I just always wondered what happened. I mean, you know, did they demolish those during the renovation? Did we as a historic review board approve it? And therefore maybe there's a precedent somewhere. Also, they bricked in a few windows because those are bathrooms behind it. And so if you could scroll down a bit more, Jamie, I added this paragraph, and I did it just to let anybody who might look at this and wonder if HPC ever approves stuff like tearing down chimneys or replacing ornate dormers, so you could read this and understand the best of what I understand happened. I'll let you read it. And if anyone has any comments or anything to add to it, I'm happy to talk about it. So this would hopefully keep anyone from raising it as a precedent. If they had something ornate, like the chimneys or the dormers, to demolish or change, or fill in windows too. So I don't think there's anything else. If you scroll down, I think for Miriam, that's all I offered. Yeah, so I offer it to see if anyone has any comments, anyone wants to change any wording. There is a grammatical problem in one of these amendments I did, but I don't think this is an example of it. Oh, hi, Steve.
Hi,
Hi,
how are you?
come on, have a seat. Thanks. We just voted on the banner, or the sign rather.
Oh,
But that was, so, and your timing's good now because we're taking up the amendments for the structure guide. You know, historic structure guide, there were 3 amendments that circulated a few months ago. And yellow, and maybe in the interest, if we have time, maybe Jamie, if I could ask you to scroll back up again. Oh, I'm sorry, go back down a little bit. Yeah, right there. So I think I mentioned this at a meeting once. If you look at the guide, somebody might wonder whether or not HPC at some point in the past ever approved tearing down the ornate chimneys and the ornate central dormer, because they don't exist now. You know, they're gone.
Mhm.
And so I went and I requisitioned the construction drawings from the late 80s. And to my surprise, there's absolutely no reference to those chimneys anywhere in the drawing, not even on the foundation plans. There's nothing. It just, you know, it's as if, so somehow, as I wrote in the yellow, if you can scroll down a bit more now, Jamie, please. So that's it then, Steve. The only reason we're talking about this job is for you to just, if you could take a moment to read what's written. If you have anything else to add to it or change, happy to discuss it. And then this would be part of the amendment. And the reason I thought it's important is to make sure that nobody thinks that whatever changes were made to this building, well, we know what changes were made to the building, you just don't know exactly when under what venue. It's not a precedent for any future applications and other work. They also bricked in a lot of windows because there were bathrooms behind them. And so it's pretty simple to read. And I guess I would like to ask if there's someone would like to make a motion to accept it as is or make any changes. Anybody like to make a motion? I can't make a motion,
I
right?
motion to accept it.
Thank you. And does anyone second it?
I'll second.
Thank you. All right, so shall we vote? Motion vote. Can we accept it? The motion is, shall we accept it as written?
Aye.
All in favor? Okay, great. So now we've got that job out of the way. So now we go to Brandreth Hill. And this I went over with Stuart, who was very helpful in, you know, giving me some background. And I think Catherine, was this something you were familiar with, or did you mention that before?
Oh, I mean, I was on the board when.
Oh, okay, great. So I'll just, you know, this one's a bit more complicated because the history is more complicated, but of course, as we've talked before, anybody who doesn't know the history of Ossining were to read the structure guide, they think that pill factory was still standing, and it's not. So the whole purpose of this is to explain the best we could resurrect the history, what happened, and a lesson that was learned from it, frankly. So I had gone back in some old archival information I could get, and went on the internet, and this is a result of that research, along with sending it off to Stuart. So you can read this, everything in yellow. Description of the buildings plus history of the factory and the demolition narrative are contained below. So that's just up there to alert people that if they don't read anything more, they know that that building no longer exists. Those buildings no longer exist. And then if you could go down a bit, Jamie, right there. So again, prior to demolition, so nobody thinks it's still there. And if you can continue, go down. Just a demolition photo. I added that from my news clipping I found online. I got that photo. And then I took the photo below, and that's just what it looks like as of 23. And then if you can continue going down, everything that follows the next page or two is just grammatical, just changing from present to past, basically. You know, we can keep going down there. I think I got all the presents converted to past. And then, and if anybody sees anything that says is instead of was, let me know. I think we got them all. And if you just keep scrolling down, the real thing to focus on is this. So demolition narrative. Okay. So I don't know if you can read it. I would like to, I'll just read it quickly. The factory and blacksmith shop were demolished between 15 and 16 by the developer that had acquired it in 2001. Demolition was controversial and contested by Vhpc because the property was locally landmarked in 13. In order to prevent further deterioration or demolition, that's why we had landmarked it. Without Vhpc's review, the DOB granted demolition permit in 2008 after DOP declared the vacant buildings unsafe. At that time, the village did not require DOB to submit the application to Vhpc for final approval. So that's where it fell down, best we could figure. And the loss of the building prompted changes. So the lesson learned is, anybody reads this, is that now there's more coordination between the DOB and Vhpc. So something good came out of it in that respect. And then in applying to demolish what was left of the project, Vhpc rejected the application, and it was overturned by the BAR, or zoning boards of appeal, excuse me. And I went through and I got the meeting notes and the appeal resolution, and I just recapped the 6 or 7 elements that are part of the final reversal. Basically, they were allowed to demolish everything. However, you'll see there are 5 or 6 requirements. So there's a trailer on site, and you can keep reading it. One is that they'll build one day a pavilion dedicated to education about industrial heritage. And the second one going down will utilize salvage components. And there's a trailer on site, which I presume is for storing that material, because one of the requirements is it will be in a, as it says below, a salvage components are be stored in the site in a weather wind tight container. So I assume that's what the trailer on site is. So, you know, we lost the building, but this is what everyone can expect whenever it ends up becoming live again. Last I could tell, they were trying to develop a condo project called Hidden Cove.
There's currently no active approvals. All their approval times have lapsed. So
Yeah.
whatever they choose to do, they'll have to come back to the
Right.
board.
But these requirements survive that. So whoever comes back one
That is
day to do
correct.
something, they've got to follow this.
Right.
So
One thing,
Go ahead.
In that narrative, will it be clear to the reader what DOB means? Or should we
Oh,
see
well,
what
let's
that is?
see. Let's go back up. Maybe where it's first said. That's a good point. DOB, the Village Department of Buildings. Yeah, can we, is this something I can ask you to keep track of, Jamie, and change, or do I need to do it on my computer and change it and send it back?
And I'll keep track of it. Actually, instead of DOB, we'll just call it building department because technically we don't call it Department of Buildings.
Yeah, that's
We call it
right.
Building department.
Okay, well, thank
So
you.
We'll just change that.
That's great.
No problem.
That's great. And anything else? That's a good point. So if there are no other comments about it, I wonder if anyone wants to make a motion to accept it as written or with the change that Steve.
I just had a question to council. Do you see anything controversial in the way that's written that might create sensitivities on the part of the party that demolished the structure? Or
Sort of given that very.
okay.
They're just-
As Catherine can remember those meetings, he sort of like looked at us like we were, you know.
I have like, I think I can feel that sensation rising up in me.
They were sitting right there and they were just. The bottom line is this, they took the buildings down, there's no question. That was before my tenure, may have been before Jamie's. I mean, it was a while ago when they did that. And that was, a lot of that was essentially demolition by neglect, because they just let it just come down. The office building, which Catherine and we were involved with, was actually a standing structure.
Yeah.
And but it was basically coming down. And you know, they wanted to take it down. It came before this board, and I think, with the exception of former Chairman Markovic's, I think the COA was denied by the board. I think it was like a 5-1 or 6-1.
Well, it's interesting, there was an approval, this is an aside, if I may pick up on what you just said, maybe you remember this, but if you look at the HPC, the rejection, and actually I meant to ask you, Catherine, if you recall any of this, when you go back into the archives, you'll see that the HPC had actually approved it. And then in hand, Adam had crossed out.
No. The resolution was incorrect. It was never approved.
Oh,
It
so
was never
somebody just
approved.
assumed it had been.
It was approved. It was a 6-1 deny. That was done because, to be honest, the chair thought it was going to be approved.
Oh.
It was and then when it was denied, they took the only appeal to the ZBA on an HPC denial that I am ever aware of having happened.
Uh-huh.
And it went to the ZBA, which was much more accommodating to the developer in the sense of saying, we want them to build something, and the way to do it is, let's see what we can do to save what's here. And that's what you ultimately got.
Yeah.
So you had that, but you know, Stephen, I'm not really worried. I mean, the bottom line is what it says.
This is
is that
pretty.
They did take it down. It did go down. We then dealt with the other building, because by the time we were dealing with the office building, the pill factory was gone. I mean, it was, if you look, there were just bricks on the ground. I mean, that's all that was there. And so, and there's no question they were taking it down. I mean, Miguel Hernandez, who was an original member of the HPC and lives behind it,
Yeah.
would come to all of these meetings because he was the one who actually, when they started the demolition, was the one who made the call because none of us knew what was going on. He just called it up. But I think it's pretty consistent with what
Do
occurred.
they still even own the property?
They do.
Huh.
They do, but they've been looking for someone to go into a joint venture with. They had someone who was very interested, but did not know, either he was not told or he didn't realize that all the land use approvals were basically going to expire in about 2 months. So he had to essentially, and he just figured, I can't do that. That's not going to happen.
Right.
So since then, nothing's occurred. I did get a call 2 weeks ago from someone who said they are interested in being a joint venture. Are there any criminal proceedings pending?
Criminal.
And I said, no, I think he was concerned about the justice court with all that. I said, from the village's perspective, there's nothing. I mean, if there is something involving the developers, in terms of their
Wow.
property. But, so there's nothing with that. What's interesting is I did get a FOIL request today from the farther property. So it's the property which is just where Crawbucky starts, which, I forget what it was.
North of this site?
Yeah,
I don't know that site that you're talking about.
it's it used to be a place where they stored computers. It's owned by some company called Whitworth. Only reason it was of interest to me is the FOIL request was for a survey because it said, my client is buying this property, which is of interest because they're the one just beyond where this one is. It's not historic.
Yeah, yeah, I think I know what
But,
you're talking about, yeah.
But as to this one, I've heard nothing. I mean, it's basically, it's sat, they would have to go back to all of the land use boards again
Yeah.
for their approvals. So we got and they had to get a ZBA approval. They had to get planning board approval. They needed, what was holding it up is they needed Army Corps approval because they were moving a stream.
Right.
So that was, so there's,
They had never gotten that originally, and that was one of the I guess, not crossing the T, dotting the I, that village told them about, that they hadn't really fully conformed to the demolition permit, so therefore they couldn't exercise.
they were moving one of the stream beds about 25 feet. So they needed Army Corps approval. In addition, they're going to need all the approvals from Metro North.
Oh,
And
wow.
I think getting approvals from the Army Corps is easy. Metro North it's like, they're gonna want their own people on site. It's a whole different. We were doing a project, the water department, to put a new pipe, which would have gone under the tracks where the Westerly Road bridge
Oh,
is.
yeah.
And, as we're digging under, we suddenly find that there's like a lot of railroad equipment underground, which Metro North did not put on any of its plans or any of its maps. So we had to stop the project at that point because,
Holy cow.
we didn't want to essentially short out the entire Hudson line.
There's a man who would want to talk to you about that, if I could suggest. About 2 weeks ago at Chatham, which I belong to, there was a talk by a guy who's a Metro North retiree. And he's devoted his life to really chronicling the history of the railroad in the Hudson Valley. And when I mentioned to him, or asked him, if he knew anything about a turntable, when the trains come to a dead end, they're turned. Well, when we had our pool at Chatham, when I looked into replacing the pool, I found some old drawings and there was a note about it. And I asked if, he knew anything about why a turntable would be there, and he didn't. But what he said was, if anybody hears anything about equipment buried, I'd love to hear about it, because apparently he then researches it and can tell you if he's given enough information where he thinks it might have been original.
Well,
So,
that's good to know, but Metro North, as I said, they're gonna have to clearly get involved.
Yeah, yeah.
Whenever this happened. There was a lot that went on with this. It's not just in your stuff, because the project is located on North Water Street. Catherine will remember all this. North Water Street, only the first 347 feet of North Water Street is a village street. The rest is in essence a private driveway for all of those properties.
oh, yeah, that's right.
So the owner of what is Plateau, they
That's right.
have to basically had to work deals with all of the other owners, because basically that's private. Because he would say, well, you village, you're gonna fix the road. I said, it's not our road, it's your road. It's all these other people's road. We only go up to where there's like an old water treatment area with this. So that first 347 is ours, the rest is everybody else. So there's a lot. So right now, there is nothing happening. And if they have to, they've got to go through all the land use boards again. And I am sure that they'll probably change what it's going to look like. I'm sure the whole thing will be different. I think it was originally proposed as 185 units, something like that.
I don't know what that.
And there was a big issue with fire department access, because they had originally had a road that would go, basically a road inside that would go around the building, but it was not wide enough to fit the ladder trucks. So they had to basically scrap that and start something else. So.
Yeah, you can see, if you look up,
Not happening tomorrow.
Not tomorrow, no.
if you want to, it's a shame, because what they were proposing was just a nondescript river, drive it condo project. It's called Hidden Cove, as I recall, and there's an image of it.
But what's interesting is that It's called Plateau Associates.
Yeah,
But keep in mind,
what?
there's no building on the plateau because the planning board refused to let them build on the plateau. So although it's called Plateau Associates, it's all built down here. It's not built up there because when they're first, I mean, this application has been pending, was originally pending in 2005.
Wow.
So it occurred, they first did it, and then they changed the zoning code in 07. So it changed their entire plan. They had to start essentially again. And it took all this time. They finally got approvals when I started in about 2017. But then they had all the HPC and all the other stuff, and they had the problem with the other buildings. So it just went on and on. But Stephen, nothing tomorrow. I can promise you that.
Yeah. Okay, so,
But otherwise, this is fine. I mean, I'm good with this. We just changed it to a building department. Yeah.
so I forgot, did we vote unanimously to accept it? And then you had your.
No, you were about to do that.
Oh, could I?
Are you gonna keep the strike-throughs?
Well, that's a very good question. I was gonna ask the board about the procedure
I
for
think
this.
you should dramatically.
Okay.
I do think it tells the story better than just
Okay.
rewriting history.
I have no problem with that. In fact, what I would say, because you didn't do it, which is fine. The beginning, which has basically everyone involved when the structural guide, we should put in something that it has been revised as of this date by this board.
Oh, I was gonna,
Just so that can be done, and we can do that. I just wanted, but Catherine, I'm fine with just keeping,
Well-
you know, what the change was, so that people would recognize.
all right, so this is not part of, this is, let's just table that for a second, put it off, because whatever we do for this should be done for every change, for every project.
Hopefully, there's nothing.
Well, hopefully
But
not,
yeah.
but there could be. So let's just put that aside for the moment. It's a good question, one I had too. So may I ask if we could vote on accepting it with the change about the building department? That's where we left off. And I think that's all I have to do is ask for a vote. So-
I motion that we accept it as worded, except for the change of the building department.
Okay, so shall we vote? Let's vote. All in favor?
Aye.
It's
Good.
unanimous. Okay, now we'll go through the last one and then let's talk about,
Did someone second that? I'm sorry.
I'll take that.
It was a second. And now I think you got National Bank.
Yes, and then we'll talk about, because it's a good point,
Strike-throughs.
Catherine, the process we go by to alert people to the change. Okay, this is very simple, National Bank amendment. The reason I did this, you might recall, is you'll notice the black eyebrows or the garlands over the windows and on the lower photo, but they don't exist on the upper original photo. And I always wondered, you know, how something like that was approved. Because generally, and also it was a totally monochromatic building, as you can see in the upper shot, but there are some variations in color as it exists now, essentially. Or it did when it was approved to be renovated. So the picture you see right below the black and white one is the picture I found in the archive of it when it was going up before HPC to be reviewed. That was a picture of the existing building. So I added that picture. And you can see that for whatever reason, between the time it was originally built in the 20s to, did you go scroll down a little bit more? I'll see the date. Yeah. Oh, built in the 1907, excuse me. And then 2008, when it was approved, those garlands appeared as some kind of contrasting color. I don't even know what they are, actually. That looks like they were brown or something. I don't think they were metal that rusted. But so I imagine, and also the change in the color, you can see they painted or did something with the stone before it went up before landmarks. So something changed in some way. And at least that put me, that to me was interesting, because if somebody wants to one day paint stone on another project and calls this job up as an example of a precedent, well, HPC really didn't approve it to be created with contrasting garlands or ornamentation above the window. I guess we just accepted it the way it was. So were you here when that was done?
No.
You know, nobody, there was no mention of those contrasting garlands. I'll call them that for now, or whatever you want to call them. There's no mention of that in the meeting notes or the certificate of appropriateness when the building was reviewed, which surprises me because from my point of view, the snapshot on the top, the black and white one, it's just like a background monochromatic building. It's very nice. But I always, whenever I look at this building, I see those black garlands above the window. I mean, it's not that it's unattractive, it's fine. But if you're talking about maintaining the integrity of the original design, I think that's quite a change. So I ended up adding the comment below for somebody who might want to just paint stone for whatever reason they might want to, that at least at the time the building was brought up for review, it had that feature. So presumably, for all we know, it was done maybe 2 years after the building was built in 1907. I have no clue. If anybody knew anything, it would be interesting. I just was surprised there's no mention of it anywhere. And on the drawings, there's no mention of it either being changed. So I assume, since it was already a contrasting color, they just assumed we're going to continue painting it. I guess it went from brown to some kind of black now. So unless anyone knows anything more about the job, I wonder whether he wants to make a motion just to accept that. There's nothing more to it, right, Jamie? I don't think there's anything else.
No.
Yeah, that's it. So that was it. You don't think it's useful to put it in, that's fine. If you think it helps tell the story, I think that would be good. But may I hear a motion if anybody wants to raise this for vote as offered?
There's another picture of it, more recent, above, I'm sorry. Or is it just those two?
Those two that I've changed. I think there's definitely, the other thing about this building is it's the signature building on all our literature and such. You see a picture of downtown, that's the building you see in the background very prominently. So, it's very much a signature building of Main Street. When you look from east to west, you just can't not see it in any pictures of Village.
So the current renovation held true to the lower photograph.
Yeah,
Maybe we changed the
Except it-
color slightly.
yeah.
But otherwise it held true to that, I see,
yeah.
not the upper photograph.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I don't know what happened. I can't find anything. And frankly, I was surprised it was never mentioned in the certificate of appropriateness
Yeah, who
or
knows, in the
anything.
40s or 50s or who knows what's gonna be. but
Well, and we never asked for,
eyebrows on, yeah.
yeah, we never asked for it to be put back the way it was. That's also, frankly, that's a surprise because this building we're coming up today for us to vote on. I would, looking at the original photo and the intent, which was it's the background building, a sort of very nice one. I'd say, bring it back to the way it was, but, okay. So it's not that it's unattractive, it's just different. So, okay. That's all I can offer on this. If somebody would like to make a motion
Well,
to,
I just wonder, is that picture, you're saying it looks different now, the color's different?
oh, no, what
I
I'm,
can't remember.
well, no, right now, if you look at the building,
It has those like reddish.
the little garlands over the windows are black.
Okay, so is
And
there a
also-
picture of that?
Yeah, there's a picture that probably, maybe if you scroll back
Oh,
up
okay,
again.
that's all. That's it, mine was
Oh, I didn't copy the pictures. I didn't copy the extent of,
okay.
but yeah, there's a picture of that building, not just in the structures guide, but even on the homepage, I think of, Village of Ossipee.
A more recent,
Yes.
Yeah.
black.
Okay.
So the only question is, do we put the current picture in there as well? Or not?
I think it is, if we
It's
looked it up,
there.
it's in a different part of the,
Oh, it's in a different part of
Yeah,
the document.
because-
Okay,
I didn't reproduce all parts of the Virium of
I
the
see.
National Bank. I looked at
Okay.
this
all
page.
right.
As long as as it stands today, especially if there's a difference in the color, I can't remember, but.
It's okay. And so, all right, so,
Let me just ask one question
Yeah, sure.
before we move on. When it came before the HPC in, let's say, 2008,
yeah,
what did the building look like?
that,
The lower picture?
yeah.
The lower one.
So they would never have had the upper picture. So what I'm saying is, if the building, when it came to them for a COA,
Right,
looked like the bottom picture,
yeah,
they'd go by the bottom, they wouldn't go by the top picture. They wouldn't go back in time to something that was in other words, if it had already been changed, they're not going to say to the person, got to change it back to the original. The
Well,
board
that's-
wouldn't do that.
That's a really interesting point, Stuart, and this is why it's kind of educational too, of how we might go forward on future projects. Like if you look at the Opera House, we had original pictures in the application.
Right.
And I can't imagine, I mean, any application I've ever been involved with, obviously in a different city, in different cities, that people always want to know, what did the building originally look like? Because if you look at something from the year you're reviewing it, anything could have changed. And so it's always I think there's always a desire to get the most original photo you can. So I think that photo, and it was also in the structures guide, the top black and white photo.
Understood. I'm saying it more from the perspective of the HPC at the time,
Yes,
which was 2008. Keep in mind, the zoning code changed in 2009. And that's when chapter 25025, which is the HPC, came into being. So what existed before that was a little bit different in terms of what they did. If you look at the code, my only point is I don't want it to come across that the prior HPC did something wrong, because I don't want it to. I don't want it to be. I mean, it's important to see what the prior building looked like, and I think that's something to be said. I just don't know when they were looking at, because that would have been Joanne Toll and Miguel Hernandez who would have known this stuff sort of inside and out. So there may well have been a reason why, which the HPC minutes never really showed as much.
yeah, the C of O, the certificate of appropriateness in the minutes make no mention of it.
Right.
The drawings make no mention of it. And I'm not criticizing, saying it was a bad decision, because the building is a nice looking building. And, the black, you could argue, is an enhancement. Some might argue it should have always been that way.
I think to show the earlier picture is absolutely fine, so that people can know this is what it looked like. So that if you're going to do something historic, we'd like you to go back to what it looked like. I think that's fine. I just don't want to.
Yeah, I don't want anybody coming with a stone building and saying I'm painting it, because that's of this building.
The only reason I brought it up was just because, just making sure if there's a picture in the guide now of what it looks like now, because it's different from that bottom. picture.
Well, yeah.
With the, there are different windows in there now.
Oh, yeah, that's actually true, the storefront, but the black is over the windows,
Yeah.
or brown, dark brown. whatever.
So however you want to, if you guys want to change to what Dan has, that's absolutely fine.
Well, we need to vote on, is there a motion to vote on it? Would anyone like to proffer a motion to vote on that change? Isaac, I think you'd probably like to make a motion to vote on this change. I'll make a motion. Okay, so second it. Anybody want to second
Second
it?
it.
Ah, great. So shall we vote? We're gonna vote on the motion to accept as written. And all in favor, raise their hands.
Aye.
Aye, unanimous. Okay.
Accepted as amended.
So now we can go to the bigger question of how do we change the documents so people know that there is a change and where the change is, whether strikes through stay, whether even the yellow highlights stay. And that's a good point to discuss.
Let me just say
Yeah, go
one
ahead.
thing on that. When, for example, the village changes a policy or the police change policies, the new policy is there with a revision date.
Yes,
What's not there is the new policy with, strike throughs
Yeah.
or red line,
yeah.
because that's essentially the draft. We can always indicate that these pages have been revised with a revision date at the bottom. And if one wants to, we can also keep the old version still online so that they can look at it. What I guess what I'm saying is when you do a revised version, the revised version doesn't have the yellow, it doesn't have the strike
Right,
throughs, it doesn't
exactly,
have the red.
exactly.
And so what you might want to do is indicate that revision, it would be, June 2023. And, the person can note that. We can even, if you want, in the table of contents, indicate, because it's such a large book, that there are revisions to blank, 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 blank pages, so people would know what those revisions are. And you can even, Dan, if you want a brief, just thing at the beginning that basically says, we revise these things to make it more consistent in terms of what we're doing or to show something. I'm only saying that because I think it will get confusing if we list strike throughs and yellows and things like that, because generally you don't do that with, a revised version of a document. It's just basically a new document.
Would you agree that by doing that, it leaves it open to reinterpretation? If both are sort of combined in one?
Well, I think that's probably the case. I mean, the advantage of putting it in is that someone would see what the change is.
Yeah.
But the fact of the matter is, if someone wants to see it, I mean, we can put the Word version up as a draft and just have one marked as final. I mean, we can do that. But usually you just put the final version in, indicate this has been revised, and then somewhere within our files, we maintain what those changes are. So if someone ever wanted it, for example, if someone were to FOIL, say, well, how did you change that? Send it to them. I mean, it's not a big deal.
Okay,
I
so,
think maybe it'd be cleaner just to put a final in with just the revised date, no underlining or yellow highlighting. So here, this is the guide as it exists now. And then as you've mentioned, Stuart, there's always a archival record in the village's records, if anyone wants to research that.
so is this something I ask you, Jamie, or, I mean,
Well, actually, Dan, before we do that, Catherine, I know you wanted to keep it.
Well, I wouldn't keep the highlighted section or anything, and I just think Brandreth is a very unique thing, and I clearly am passionate about it, and so but I think it says something. Maybe I'm coming at it from too, I don't know, ethereal side. I just feel like you know how I feel about it.
Yes, I do.
But I just feel like it's different from everything else in here because, and maybe that is irrelevant.
Maybe that's, why don't we, let's say this, Brandreth of all the buildings that's here, Brandreth's not here anymore, unlike the other ones.
well, we don't know yet how many more might
Well,
be there.
no. But my
Structure
point
guide.
is of what's in this, in terms of what you specifically pointed out. Brandreth's not here.
Yeah, that's true.
National Bank is here, Olive Opera House is here, all those are here. So it may be that to do this, what we want to do is maybe have a different introduction to the specific thing on Brandreth, which is that this is a building that is not here any longer. And this is sort of, and then we'll follow up with what
Well, I
you say
think,
about it.
Yeah, there's definitely an argument to display that one differently, because
You can highlight it in that sense, that unlike, this is, Dan, as you said, this is an example of why the importance of basically, watching these buildings like a hawk, because if something had occurred earlier, you may well have been able to save the factory, or you may have been able to do things like.
Well, to that point then, and also I wanted to just get to some other
Sure.
points. Can I ask Jamie if you go back to the Brandreth, because I think that's where I had a typo, the bad grammar. And also it's to refer back to what, stop right there. What Stuart just brought up. So there is that sentence up there that I put in response to your point, Stuart, that you made
Okay.
weeks ago. Now, it could obviously be more forceful. But let's assume, so change of proposed 41123, that would be gone in the final version. And what you see highlighted, that would just be the way it is without the highlight. And I think it says description of the buildings plus history of factory and demolition area. I think it alerts people to the fact that something different happened on this project. And the protocol for enacting the change, would that be like at the bottom of that particular page? It would say amended, I guess it will be today's date, right? 6/5.
What we would probably do is on the pages that have revisions, it would say something like REV 6/2023. Something
Okay,
like that.
all right. So is that something Jamie, your staff does, or do I have to go back and do that?
No, we can take care of that.
Oh,
We
okay.
can take care of that, because it's a Word document, so we can, that can be done.
And may I also ask, and I don't know if you can do this, Jamie, because I didn't give you this on file, but if you go into the village website and you go back to the structures guide, there's the first page. So if I could ask you to do that, because I don't think it's on any of these things I sent you.
I have a quick question.
Sure,
Where it says demolition 2015,
yeah.
I think it said like unpermitted demolition or like demolition with lapse permit,
Well, that's gonna be
Permit.
controversial possibly.
well, it's
That's
the
all.
facts in that and it's.
Well, no, when you say unpermitted.
Well, I'm sure the lingo is not correct, like, I'm sure there's a very
There's-
legal way to say it, but
Oh, I don't need
that
to.
Significant site. There,
I think it's,
if you could go
I
down.
think the best way to say it is this. It has to call attention to people that, because this was
Yeah.
a really tough one. You remember it. I mean, it was,
If you could go down.
we didn't have HPC meetings that
Yeah,
went
stop
long.
right there.
Stephen, this was like,
We'll talk about it.
this is like a blood match. I mean, because they were just nasty. I mean, it just was like, they thought HPC would be careless. I mean, just, I think they also had a sense that, well, we'll go to the ZBA and we'll just get this, you know.
and I think they put the office building down.
So I think it's fair to some extent, but to put something like that in. But Dan, for example, Village of Ossining, New York,
Yeah,
Significant Structures Guide, April 2010, underneath that would say revised June
so that's
2023.
what I was gonna just suggest too. So can we also then just say revised June 2023?
Yeah,
And then everywhere there's a revision, you'll see the revision note on the bottom of that page. That's what you're saying?
that's my thought.
Okay,
yeah.
fine. If that's the process the village takes,
That's
then
great.
I'm all for that. I don't want to reinvent the wheel.
And the only thing I will do, Jamie, if you scroll it down just a little bit where it talks, we have all these loads of acknowledgements. We will add an acknowledgement of the current board, only
Okay.
because you've made revisions.
All right,
But other than that, where it's revised and, or added, Dan, where we're talking about, solar panels and things like that, that will all be indicated as a revision to the original document. So it'll say, as I said, REV.
no, that's fine. So that's the very simple, clear way to do it. There'll be that, so whoever's doing this will say revised June 2023. And then I think what you've suggested also, and the revision date at the bottom of every appropriate page.
Right.
And then I think you're also offering Village of Ossining Historic Preservation Commission, the names.
So, yeah, and with that one, for example, that, what I'm looking to do is where it has Joanne Toll through Deborah Van Steen,
Yep,
I'd have in parens there 2010 when this was done. And then underneath that, I'd have these members
okay,
with your, with
Sure.
this date, so that everyone would know.
right.
The
Now,
rest of the boards will just remain.
Yeah, I'm not gonna, what I may do with the rest is just put in parens 2010,
Mhm.
so that everyone knows. I also may put in Joyce Cola's historian, just so it's reflected there.
sure,
And in fact, she was in on these discussions before she left the board, so we can keep her
Yeah.
there. Our Ossining Architectural Guidelines Committee, that's back from 2010. Department of Planning, you see Valerie was on them.
yeah,
We go way back. So we can change some of those things around, including who, the village board obviously has changed, and the village manager has changed. So that we can all take care of. That's not a problem,
great.
just to
So-
make it current.
Now, the only other thing is just the FYI,
Yeah.
it may be by the end of the year, we have even more revisions, so it'll just be another,
Just gets revised
Yeah.
again.
it just gets provided.
Not a
Good.
problem.
Okay, fine, so this is great, so now, if I could ask the village, like you said, to make those changes, if you want to show them to me first before you post it, that would be great. And then, so that's all set.
We'll do that. Did you want to go to the next three things you want?
Yeah, but before, it's almost 8 and I'm trying to keep it an hour, but there was a question that came up that we wanted you to opine on, Steve. July 3rd is the next meeting. Should we make it the following week? Because that's the day before July 4th.
Oh, yeah, that's a good idea.
Okay.
All right, so I guess,
Jamie will do it.
Did that-
the 10th then?
sorry, Stuart. Does
Okay.
anyone else here
Oh, I'm sorry.
have an issue with that? Would they prefer the 3rd? Because,
No.
No.
I wouldn't do it. I wouldn't do it.
oh, good. So
Neither
it's the 10th.
neither
Thank
are
you.
good for me, so 10th
10th is fine.
is fine.
And it looks like we have, I think Jamie said, one application so far, so we'll see if anything else comes in. And I bet by that time also Dan have information with regard to Sing Sing.
Oh, that would be terrific.
So we can,
That would
we
be
have to work
terrific.
on that.
So I'll just leave it then. If, Jamie, you could go to the, top 3, like awning, just, and we'll flip through it quickly just to give you a reminder of what it is. And we won't have to necessarily go through it all, but basically, this would also have to get approved by the BAR. So anything we approve here, we then send to Seth Roy and say, hey, what do you think? So maybe I could just finish up on this awning thing. If you could scroll down a little bit more, Jamie. This might be the only thing that might be, yeah, just stop there. Basically, you know, awnings, they always talk about storefront awnings, but if we're being historic, awnings above the storefront were also done back at the turn of the century, especially facing south. And that's an ad I found online of just, you know, how extensive it can be. If you could scroll down a bit further, Jamie, I'm wondering if we offer people this idea, keep going. So stop right there, move up a little bit, please. So the top black and white picture I found online, and the bottom one you'll notice is at the intersection of Highland and Croton. They look the same, but they're not the same building. They have the same kind of style. As you can see, back in the day, you know, the windows above the first floor had awnings. You know, and how would this building look if that had not just awnings on the storefront level, but also the, you know, the floors above? You know, is that something we want to encourage? And I think, Jamie, I don't know what I have under that. Keep going. It just says that the illustrate upper levels. Yeah, and then also the trees on Main Street don't cover the second floor yet, or the third. So you don't get solar shading by the trees. You do get them ironically at the storefront level. You probably didn't have them when these buildings were originally built. So actually, ironically, the idea of needing awnings for sun control, I think on Main Street with so many trees now, maybe is less important than possibly doing it on the floors above if you want it to be, you know, very green. But then obviously these aren't requirements, they're just suggestions or what we think should be guidelines. So I'm throwing that out there. I don't propose we vote on this now or the others, but I guess this is the one that might be the most expensive to talk about at one point. So we have time in the next meeting. I'd like to bring this one up and then the other two. And if anybody else has any other, you know, ideas about the design guidelines or knows anything more about the structures, buildings that maybe had been like Brander, there's so many of them in the guide, who knows if they're still all around, I don't know. You know, let's bring it up. And then also later in the year, I have an idea of adding some property to the structure guides, which could be interesting to talk about. And then I guess that's it. So we'll go over the design guidelines next time permitting, after we deal with the application. And this was very good then. So we got the date changed and we have the structure guide changed so far. And that was the agenda, right? Okay, thank you. Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
We motion to.
And does anyone want to second it? Somebody has to second it, right? Sure.
We'll just all leave.
Do we have to vote to adjourn or do I just hammer it? I forgot.
All in favor?
All in favor? Aye.
See you on the 10th.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
All right.
Thank you, Jamie. Take care.